Hello, my name is James. I'm the Director of Berkeley² Academy. So today our webinar is how COVID-19 is affecting admissions to top colleges. So we'll be discussing about the current trend, what happened this year, and what's going to happen next year, and possibly what's going to happen the year after that. Okay. So the first thing we'll go over it will be the trends in admission from top universities, and then we'll talk about the COVID-19 updates, fall 2020, then the financial impact, and how to improve your admission chances for 2020, 2021, and possibly 2022 as well. All right, so let's get started. So new trends in admission. So actually, surprisingly, for this year, actually the acceptance rates to Ivy League schools have increased. Yay! Okay, so if you can look from the 10 years ago, from like 8.91 all the way to now, it's been steadily declining, topping off with the lowest acceptance rates from last year, which was. But for this year, the seniors for this year, their acceptance rates actually went up. As you can see, like Brown, they went from 6.6 last year to 6.9. For Harvard, they went from 4.5 to 4.9. Okay, so on and so forth. So this is, for seniors this year at least, is good news. Okay. And then we can also compare the acceptance rates among private and public universities. Okay, so the private universities, all of the, most of their acceptance rates has gone up from the previous year. But surprisingly, for the public schools, actually their acceptance rate has gone down. So you can see the University of Michigan, 23.5% last year, 22.8% this year. Virginia, 24.3% last year, 20.5% last year. So you can see how these have affected. So private schools where their acceptance rate has been going down steadily over the last decade or two, and public schools where their acceptance rate has kind of stayed similar, or if not a little bit higher, okay, but has actually gone down this year. Okay, so the reason for that is because of the COVID-19. Okay, so so I can explain a little bit about, so private schools, so acceptance rates, a lot of schools, for the ranking purposes and things like that in their national ranking, they want their acceptance rates low, and they want their matriculation rate, or yield they call it, high. What matriculation and yield is, of all the accepted students, how many or what percentage of those students are actually accepted and are coming to the university. Okay, so obviously you can see how you want that to be as high as possible, and that's called the matriculation rate, or it's also called the yield. Okay, so they want that as close to 100% as possible. So with the COVID-19, what happened is a lot of students that have they might have accepted or things like that, or because they knew that some students, especially the international students, might not be accepting or might not be coming into the US, or some out-of-state students might not be coming to their states because for whatever reason, for COVID-19 or for financial reasons, they're not accepting even though they're accepted. So what they did was they increased the number of acceptances so that their yield, or the number of the freshman class that's coming in, will not be affected. Actually, they'll have a full class. Okay. So now with the public schools, especially the local public schools, because of the financial issues and things like that might have come about because of the pandemic, they choose to go to in-state schools, or they choose to go to public schools with lower tuition and other options as well. So, so students may prefer local public schools over private schools. So because of COVID-19, lower cost of attendance, reduced travel, and options to commute are all alluring qualities that public universities possess. Okay, I mean, you cannot beat in-state tuition versus a private university anywhere. Okay, so that is why a lot of students, because maybe the financial hardships that are brought on by the COVID-19, they're choosing to stay in state and go to public schools. Okay, so but one thing is, because of that, a lot of the schools that students might consider safety might not be safety. Okay, especially if they are public schools, and it might be harder to get into this year because you're going to have a lot more students applying to those options because of the lower tuition. Okay. Private universities will likely increase their acceptance rates along with the number of students waitlisted. So they're going to use waitlist a lot more than before. Okay, so this will be done to protect their yield with influence, which influences their rank and popularity. So, let's say you accepted 100 students, and then for let's say 50, 90 spots or something like that, and only, let's say, 70 students have accepted and were committed to coming to the school, then that's why then for the rest, they'll pull from the wait list. Okay, so a lot of the students actually this year who were on the wait list actually got into the university upon waiting. Okay, so the schools are going to be using the wait list a lot. Okay, therefore, just because you're on the wait list, do not be dejected. Make sure you show continued interest. And also another trend that's going to happen is that more students will be taking gap years or deferring enrollment. So what gap year is, even though you're accepted, you tell the university, I'm going to take a year off to travel, work, or whatever. And this has been a popular trend among students. So for famously, President Obama's daughter, she deferred her enrollment to her school for a year so she can have a gap year. So a lot of students are utilizing this too, and colleges have shown that they like students that take gap year, but but for this year, students might be taking gap year just for the financial reasons. So they might be accepted, but to earn my tuition or things like that, I need to work, or because of all the travel restrictions, or they just don't want to do online classes, maybe because the fall classes are not guaranteed that it will be in person. So because of that, a lot of students will prefer the gap year option or do defer until next year. What that means, those students are going to be already accepted and count as the spots for next year students. So what that means is they might already have the slots. So the number of open spaces that the universities can have, that might decrease, which means it will be increased competition for not this year maybe, but the next year's class. So if you have sophomores right now, you will affect them in terms of making the university tougher to get into. So changes in admission practices. Okay, so colleges are adjusting because of all the stuff, because tests are being canceled. All the schools, a lot of the schools are going pass fail in terms of their fall grades. So what they're doing is they'll set pass fail grades on transcripts, do test optional for SAT, ACT, and because the students cannot go to the school to get a printout or get access to official transcripts. Official transcripts are actually the school will be sending a sealed envelope to the schools, but because the offices are closed, they don't have access to that. They will accept unofficial transcripts, like they'll print out their own thing that they might see through home access or something like that. Okay, so so if you can see the graph right now, so these are the graphs of the current trends. Okay, so so blue is standard practice, so which means they are not changing anything, and then yellow is changes already made. So for like allowing pass fail and other equivalent non-qualitative grades on high school transcripts, you can see that 30% they already made their changes. 20% are sticking to their standard practices. For now, it does not mean that they might not change. Okay, but for now. And then the gray area, the 18%, they're not even discussing it. Okay, so you can see a lot of the colleges are actually leaning more toward they already made changes to accommodate these things, or they're under consideration, or they're making discussions or talking about it. Okay. Um, so, however, when it comes to monetary aspects of the application, there has been very little change. Okay, so one monetary aspect would be like, so waiving enrollment deposits, waiving application fee, enrollment deposit deadline extension. So only thing that they have allowed a lot of the university have done is the deadline extension. So usually you have to send out a letter of intention to the school that you want to go by May, but a lot of the schools are having it delayed so that you can commit to the school in June or something like that, and giving you a lot more chance to accept them. Okay. So changes in admission process. So there has not been changes to the admission process as a whole. So what that means is they're still looking at the same categories when it comes to judging their students or trying to figure out what student is fit for them. So the holistic review of materials will not change. Now the emphasis of those individual sections will be changed because the transcript or because of this false grade, going past fail and not really kind of giving a true representation of the student. Okay, they might lessen the impact of the GPA and the rank, but because of that, they might make other factors greater. So like essays, you know, SAT subject test, all those kind of things. Okay, so transcripts will still be required, although unofficial transcripts may be permissible for this upcoming year. So unlike some colleges, Ivy League schools are not announcing test optional procedure. So a lot of schools have gone test optional. What that means is even if you don't have SAT tests or SAT or ACT, you can still apply to us, okay? So, but if you're thinking Ivy Leagues or these top tier schools, they're still requiring it at this time at least, okay? So, but admission counselors will consider context of the COVID-19 when weighing the importance of these exams. So let's say if you took it early because you plan on taking it during May or something like that, and you took it early just to, I don't know, get a practice or just to see where you're at, and you got a very low grade or not the grade, not the score that's representative of you, they might take that into account. But we'll talk about a little bit more down the line, but test optional does not mean test blind. So just because you don't have a test, oh yeah, then I have a better chance of getting into the school. No, you have a better chance of applying to the school. So the door to get into the school has not been opened wider, okay? Now, chance to look at the door, that has gone wider. So you can think of it that way. So if you have more, so colleges, universities, they always like, more information about the student, especially good information about the student. So if you have more good information to give to the colleges, you're more of a sure thing to them. Therefore, you're going to be a more competitive student to them. Okay, so you want to, if you can, um, do the optional things. A lot of students, they look at the word optional means, oh, I don't have to do it. No, for these, we always say this is when you go to a gunfight, you want to have a lot of bullets. Okay, tests, all of these factors are bullets. So more bullets you have, the better chance you'll get into that school. So subject tests will be optional for most of these schools. So unlike the SAT and ACT, subject tests, they made it more optional, okay? In fact, MIT say they no longer accept SAT subject tests at all. Now, the reason for MIT doing that is because all of their students, when they submit their subject test, are almost near perfect. Okay, so that's why to them it does not differentiate another student from another student. But for most of the schools, they still made a test optional, unlike MIT, which they're not requiring. Okay, no longer accepting. They say we don't want to see it. Okay, so if they say test optional, you still want to take the test and submit those tests to give you a better chance. Okay, So accessibility of SAT, ACT. So College Board announced 2 ways to accommodate students in taking the SAT. So they're adding a lot more dates. Okay. Also, they're adding more schools, which means the capacity of the test, they can accommodate more students to take the test. So they might host that. They usually host that in high schools, but they might host it now in junior highs and elementary school to give you more seats so that more students can take it in those dates. Okay. They are also discussing possibility of administrating digital SAT. So with the AP tests, they've gone digital. So they're making the AP test um, online this year, 45-minute free response questions only. So they're kind of testing that option, but I would not count on it coming really soon because there's lots of logistical things that how is it going to be proctored? What can you how can you prevent students from cheating on the SAT, so on and so forth. So they prefer to have these in person, okay, for safety reasons, security reasons, and things like that. But they are considering that option if for the fall, the schools are still going to be remain closed. So these are, again, these accommodations help to eliminate reasons for not taking the SAT. So even though some colleges are going test optional, students should continue to prepare for these exams to stay competitive. Okay, and ACT has not announced making similar changes as the SAT, but you need to. So we tell the students, just be prepared for the next one. If this one gets canceled, then prepare for the next one, so on and so forth, especially for the juniors, okay? It's because these dates will be the last chance that you can improve upon your application. So for now, SAT, August is the earliest. And they are adding the September one as well. They used to not have a September one, but they're adding that. So for top schools, in the past 2 weeks, the leadership of like the Ivy Leagues have released letters summarizing their changes to their school operation. So a lot of these schools don't want to make a definitive claims, but most of the schools actually have closed their schools even until the summer. So a lot of the classes that they wanted to host during the summer are now going online. A lot of the programs are actually being canceled. So those summer programs that UTs have and other universities have, like research programs, and those things have been canceled. Okay, so if you were looking for that to give you extracurricular stuff or something to put on the resume, for this summer at least, those options will not be available. So campus closures, okay, so top colleges are following stay at home. Most of the schools are following stay at home place orders, okay. Classes are being taught remotely. So non-critical research on campus has been suspended. So unless it's for vaccine producing or those type of research, those are actually have been closed or suspended, which means it causes funding issues. So a lot of schools, like especially a lot of research universities, they do get a lot of money from the funding. That's why they give preference to professors with research and that kind of things, okay? So because this money that comes in goes to the school, okay? Summer programs and admissions events for this year has been canceled, as I mentioned before. So especially like if you are planning on visiting colleges or things like that, now what they have is virtual tours, which we'll get to when we talk about demonstrated interest in later slides. So how long will the campuses be closed? No one knows, okay? So, you know, in the beginning of this pandemic, you know, people were saying, oh, by the summer, things will get better. So people were talking about opening up schools and businesses by May. But now, as you hear the news, you know, the schools are going to be closed at least until end of the summer. So what could fall 2020 look like for admitted students? So if you are admitted, okay, so decreasing in number of in-class compared to fall 2019, yes. Okay, what they means, they're going to have a lot more online options. So basically, you know, if you are limited to certain physical, or even though the campus is open, but you're still like, oh, I don't know, I'm iffy about it, they're going to provide options for you to take those courses online. Okay? And then measuring the financial impact. So by closing campuses and dorms and things like that, colleges are actually losing a lot of profit. Okay, so potential profit gain from programs, athletics, all the games are now canceled. All the research, a lot of that is canceled. So they're having to also they're refunding students for like their dorm and things like that. So they're losing lots and lots of money. Okay, and lost revenue. Okay, so because of that, schools are also, you know, limiting their expenses. So suspending new hires, reducing salaries, revaluing capital projects. Capital projects means like building new buildings, things like that. Restricting spending, limiting university-sponsored travel, so on and so forth. So universities, um, I always tell the parents as well, and the students, they are a business, okay? A lot of people might think this higher learning educational institute, none of them are a lot of them are not. Okay, so they are business, okay? So you wanna make sure if there's a financial impact, then it's also going to impact the student as well. Okay, and a lot of parents or a lot of people are talking about, oh, how come they don't use their billions and billions of dollars in their endowments? Like I believe like Harvard has $40 billion with a B in endowment, but schools are making it clear that they cannot rely on their endowment. So used to be usually schools use about 3 to 4% of their endowments every year. So these endowments are invested into different, so what they're actually using is like the interest produced from those endowments to utilize for their day-to-day and also like for scholarships and things like that. Okay. So you can see that pie graph of how universities or how Harvard uses their endowments every year. So, so now, because of that, because of the endowments for this year, so a lot of the endowments are used for scholarships, okay? And they're dedicated to that. So it means available funds for financial aid will, but if the amount of endowment might decrease because of the fall in the stock market or in the investment, or just because they're not getting any revenues and things like that, so they have to dip more into the endowment, which means the scholarships that they have set aside, obviously all the other costs would be affected, but the scholarships that they have set aside for merit scholars, those could be impacted as well. Okay. Okay, so I mean, there is a government aid for the schools, like through the CARES Act, and you've probably heard from news like certain schools got, you know, 10, you know, so on and so much money from the CARES Act and things like that. But a lot of the top schools with large endowments are actually not accepting such help, but the two schools that we listed, like Vanderbilt, they accepted a $5 million in the relief fund, and the Cornell $12 million, which half of them by law they have to use for scholarships or allotted for the students. So how will this affect the students though? Okay, so universities are promising to uphold their commitment to provide, you know, aid for COVID-19, but this may not be the entire story because a student's ability to pay for, so if a student can show that they are able to pay for the tuition and all of that without getting help from the university, they might make them more attractive. So there are two types of schools. There are need blind schools and need aware schools. Okay, so you can check to see what schools are need aware and need blind. Okay, a lot of schools are need aware. What they mean is that they do take into account your financial financial status currently, okay, when they make a decision on either to accept you or not, okay? So which means for next year, if you're able to show that you're financially able to afford the university that you're applying to, they might take, you might look more attractive to the colleges rather than a student with the similar stats, but might show that they might not be able to afford without help. So you can see like how some of the schools of the Ivy League schools, okay, how much they've handed out. So you will see maybe for next year that the money allotted will be less than this year. So how to maximize financial aid? So cost of attendance may be a factor when you consider more heavily when you're choosing the colleges. So use each college's financial aid calculator. So when you go to their websites, they'll actually give you a rundown of all of their tuition, room and board, all of that kind of stuff, expected, you know, students, living expenses, all that kind of things. So you can actually go and see what your financial aid calculator would look like. So you do get a financial package once you're accepted from the schools, but before that you can actually calculate it yourself, okay? Another thing is FAFSA is an application you will need to submit to apply for federal student aid. So this is from the government, okay? And this is a need-based financial aid. So they have grants, which is free money. You don't have to pay that back. They also have loans. They also have work study and different means. But that is dependent on your financial status. So obviously need-based. Okay, so if you make less money, then you're going to get a lot more aid. If you make more money, you're going to get less aid. So they request tax information from 2 years prior. So last year's tax return and maybe the year before that, okay? But the thing is, because of the COVID-19, this year's or the next year's tax return might not honestly reflect your need. In that case, you do need to prepare to appeal the financial aid decision, or you might want to file the taxes early, okay, so that you can showcase the house. So you might be earning, you know, a lot more this year compared to what next year, or by the time you pay those taxes and things like that. So you want to get, if there's a significant difference in the amount of pay, you want to make sure that you let the schools aware of that, so you can get more need-based financial aid. And a lot of the private schools, they also have a CSS profiles, which they utilize for their own students. So schools themselves, so FAFSA is from the government, but schools also have their own financial aid offices that have their own money to kind of give to the students. So you need to fill out a separate profile form. Sometimes most of them is CSS profile, or there might be other forms involved. So you do want to get started on those. Now, how to improve your admission chances for next year? Okay, so let's look at rank and GPA. So with grades turning pass-fail for many students, this semester classes will be harder to assess. Now, some are pass-fail, some are still getting grades. So different schools and districts have different guidelines. So even if your school is pass-fail, they might add a little memo or notes on the transcript that allows the teachers or counselors to leave comments. So what does that mean? So you want to continue to interact with your teachers. Okay, so a lot of students thinking, you know, oh yeah, everything's online, you know, lectures are recorded, I don't have to have any interaction with the teachers. The teachers are still there. They're still holding office hours. They're still available to, you know, answer questions and help through email and chat and through Zoom and things like that, even live interaction. So you want to continue to participate in classes and also reach out to your teachers during these office hours, okay? because guess what? You're going to be, at the least, you will be asking some of these teachers for recommendation letters. So if you have not interacted with them for the 6 months from now until end of the summer, then to ask for the recommendation, they might not even remember you, okay? So you want to make sure you continue your interaction. Also for motivation purposes, when you interact with more of the school personnel, okay, you feel more like a student, which means you are going to study more, pay more attention to the lectures and that kind of thing. Okay, so just to give yourself a little bit more motivation to focus on your academics, but also for, you know, they might have notes that they might have to send out, or even for recommendation letters, you do want to continue your interaction. Your fall semester grades will be judged more heavily. So if you're applying to a school that have spring semester deadline, and there are schools right now with usual normal fall deadlines, they're talking about extending that till spring, okay? So which means you might have to submit your fall grades as well, fall semester grades, which means if you do, then it's going to, the schools are going to take a very strong look at that. They're going to review that closely to see how are you faring, or how are you doing, or are you continuing to challenge yourself through your course loads, but also in the 6 months that you are out of school, okay, were you actually studying and things like that, which will be reflected on your first semester grades. So for those that are kind of slacking off because everything's online and just doing bare minimum, please understand this is the stepping stone for the next. So if you're taking AP Sciences, you want to make sure you have the prerequisites all done. If you're taking the next year's math, you want to make sure you have all the formulas and all of those mastery of this year's math classes, okay? Because there will be a lot of catch up to do once the fall semester opens, and you don't want to be behind. And some schools might have you send them your first 6 weeks grades, or even a first quarter grades as well. So you want to start off the gate strong. So for those that are thinking senioritis all the way, okay, this is not the one disease is enough, okay? Don't get senioritis as well, okay? So do not think that, oh yeah, I'm a senior, I can just kind of coast. Make sure if you're applying to schools with spring deadlines, make sure to have really good grades in the fall. And this goes to the sophomores currently as well. They're going to look at your junior year a lot closely, which means you want to do really, really well in your junior year. Okay? And make sure you continue to take AP, the weighted classes, the more challenging courses, because they'll be looking at your course selections. Standardized testing. Plan to take either the SAT or ACT when test dates become available. Okay, if you're a junior, you just have to hope that the next one does not get canceled and continue to work towards it, okay? You know, you might think that, oh, it's 3 months away now, so what's the point of studying? Just keep on preparing, because they might do another one a month from now, especially ACT. They have not changed their schedule. You might have another test option available, okay? Things like that. So you want to continue to be preparing, and just because it's test optional does not mean it's in your best interest to not take these tests. It is always in your best interest to showcase to the colleges the most good things about yourself. So good test grades, everything, okay? So if you have options to take them, please do so. So again, a lot of the schools have gone test optional, but specific schools, like you saw, like a lot of the Ivy Leagues and top tier schools, they have not gone away from requiring tests, or they have not said they're going test optional. So make sure, if you're thinking of those schools, make sure you have your SAT and ACTs done. Extracurriculars. So how you spend your time now will be a huge factor in admissions. They're going to be curious, okay? What type of student were you, okay, during this time when you didn't have school, Okay, so colleges will understand that you are not able to participate in your normal activities, but they will expect that you did something productive with this time. I mean, that's why colleges, even before this pandemic, they always look to see what you did during the summer, the 3 months that you had off. Okay, now you basically have a 6 months off. So they're going to be more curious as to what you did, and were you productive? Were you actively, making yourself better? Okay, or you making yourself a better person, better student, what? Okay, so make sure you do something productive so that you can showcase to the colleges that you are improving yourself during this time, not just in your games, okay? Improving yourself academically and other factors, okay? So get creative, okay? If you can continue your extracurriculars online, great, like computer science and things like that, coding, those are some of the things that you can continue to do, all right? You can still meet with your club, you can still meet with your group to, if you have a nonprofit going on or things like that, you can still do something with that, okay? Develop hobbies and create personal projects. So there are students, creating things. I have one student starting a blog. Okay, I have another student like doing math projects right now, but she's also thinking about doing other types of medical supplies and donating them. So things like that, okay? And also there are independent learning options through like online courses, and a lot of them are free now. Okay, so like Coursera, MIT OpenCourseWare and things like that. So you can show to the colleges that, yeah, I've been expanding my academic, knowledge. So research online certifications, okay? So a lot of the computer-based things, you can actually get certifications through online. So if you wanted to learn that new programming language, this is the perfect time to do it. If you wanted to get a certification on, Microsoft Office, okay, you can do it during this time as well, okay? And brainstorm ways to give back to your community. So colleges do care a lot about what type of person you are. So a person who's making an impact wherever they are, so within your community right now, they know that that person is going to make a similar impact once they come to my community, my university community. So they want to see those type of leaders, those type of proactive people who are actively looking for needs and fulfilling them with whatever skills that they have. Okay. So I've had my students like download like Nextdoor app. It's a like a social media app for your neighborhood. And then one thing I noticed on that is like people are posting their needs. I cannot go to the grocery store, I need eggs. Can someone, things like that, from little things all the way to like, can someone babysit my kid for a couple hours so that I can get some work done. Okay, so they are actually telling people what their needs are, and if you have certain skill sets that you can meet those needs, do so. All right. Okay. So that's another way of you helping out the community. Okay. Like as I mentioned, like making masks and donating them, things like that. You're helping out your community. Okay. So tutoring your peers. I have students like doing like baking classes online for little kids. I have students that are like teaching Taekwondo online. I also have a student like teaching coding or like robotics, things like that. So I'm not asking you to just go out there and ignore your shelter in place. So whatever you have, okay, through online and Zoom meetings like this, okay, you are able to still provide these type of services with your skill set that you have currently. Demonstrated interest. So demonstrated interest is how much a student have shown that they are to the universities, how heavily they're favoring the university. So if you were to put it into dating terms, sending flowers, love letters, that kind of things would be a demonstrated interest, okay? So if I'm getting love letters from this person, if I'm getting flowers and candies from this person, then I know that that person's definitely interested in me, okay? So you want to be doing similar things, okay, to the schools that you are interested in, okay? not send candy, but you know, in these ways that I'll be explaining, okay? Because colleges have a lot of students that are applying, and they don't know if that student that's applying to me, if we are their #1 choice. So, and I mentioned before about the yield. So demonstrated interest and the yield goes hand in hand. So if students have shown a lot of demonstrated interest, then they know that this student, once accepted, is most likely to come to my university, which will add to their yield, okay? So this becomes a lot more important in this time because of all the factors that I have mentioned before, okay? So they want to, especially if you're applying to schools that are out of state, if you're an international student, then you definitely want to make sure, okay, to demonstrate interest, okay? Because if they think that, oh, you are likely to choose local schools with less tuition than come to my school, even though you have the right stats, they might not accept you because it will hurt their yield, okay? So these are some of the ways currently you can do right now to demonstrate your yield, okay? So normally you will visit colleges, and that will be one of the ways in which you can demonstrate interest, but right now you can't. They're closed, okay? And they don't want you there because you might be diseased, okay? So right now what they're doing is they have virtual tours online, okay? So do those virtual tours, okay? So a lot of the schools, even if they didn't have virtual tours before, now they're adding them. So if you had certain schools that you had in mind, go to their website, visit it, okay? Do the tours, okay? Make sure you leave evidence that you were there, okay? With what is it? IP addresses and things like that. Colleges are tracking students to see how much time they have spent on their websites, okay? So I made this joke before, but you know, even if you're not actively on their website, maybe your parents can go on that website, okay? Maybe your pets can go on that website, okay? So just to show that from your IP address, you can show that, oh yeah, this student has visited this school this many times for this length of period. So longer and multiple visits show them that you're interested in that school. Contact admission counselors with questions you have. Right now, you can just contact them about what the next semester or next year's campus life would look like, that kind of thing. With whatever topics, you know, because they have email records and they're going to know how many times you contacted them, okay? Read admission blogs to keep up to date about what they're saying about the school, okay? Research what each school has to offer in terms of extracurriculars, majors, and minor, okay? So this is good when you're writing your college essays and also when you're doing interviews, okay? Because then you can show that, oh yeah, this student has done his research on our school. He knows about this program, he knows about this professor, he knows about this research that we're doing, he knows about this community thing that we're doing. So all of that lets them know that, oh yeah, this student has done the research. You have shown interest, okay? Get to know the city or community where the college is located, okay? Learn about the culture, history, even restaurants, local businesses, museum, parks, and all those kind of things, okay? Choose to apply early to your favorite colleges to show your commitment to the school. So applying early this year is going to make a lot more impact than before. So schools have early decision and early action, which means, so they have their regular deadlines. So the early decision, early action means that it's about a month ahead. So by applying early, you show to the schools your commitment and your interest to the school a lot more than applying with the regular deadline. And early decision, difference between early decision and early action is the early decision, if you're accepted, you're legally bound to go. So if you apply to a school early decision, they know for sure that if you're accepted, they're going to come to your school. So that's 100% yield. So they're going to factor that a lot into their school, into that admissions process. Essays. Okay, so if you're a junior, the biggest impact that you have right now that you can do is going to be your essays in your application. So essays are going to showcase your personality and potential better than any other aspects of your application. This is the chance for you with your own voice to express to them and show your personality and character and whatever things that were not that might not appear on the other parts of the application. Okay, so you should write all essays that are available to you, even ones labeled optional. Optionals are not optional when everyone else is writing it. Okay, so if you want to make yourself competitive, optionals are must. Okay, essay should explain how you used your time during this pandemic. So that is different between how you use your time and writing about the pandemic. Okay, so please distinguish between the two. Okay, describe your activities and goals in more detail. Give insights to unique experiences you have had. Do not write about coronavirus. Again, do not write. They don't want to know about coronavirus. Okay, there are, I'm sure a lot of people already have this, but you might already have coronavirus fatigue. Guess what? Admission officers are going to, if they read about coronavirus in every essay that they're going to not want to read about it. Okay, so if you write about things that everyone else is writing about, then it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to stand out. Explain difficult circumstances and how you overcame them. Okay, so brainstorm these topics now. Okay, and please go from the aspect of how can I showcase myself. Okay, they want to know about you, not you, 6 months ago, not you right now, but all about you. So they want to know, so whatever that puts you in the best light, okay, that's what you want to do. So, and avoid like topics that a lot of other students might do. Like I know that a lot of students that are second generation or 1.5 generation immigrants here, they want to write about their cultural differences or their immigration story. Well, if you want to be competitive or you want to stand out, you might not want to write about that because you know that other students might write, other international students or other immigrant students will write about that. Okay? So please start early. What better time right now? I know a lot of juniors, you guys have a lot of free time right now, so you can think about these things. But I know that also with this lot of stay shelter in place, actually students are becoming more lot introspective, which is good because then you will be able to write a better, more deeper essay. Qualitative assessment. So you will need to stand out more in your applications, and what better way than to have real people convincing the school of your potential. So we're talking about recommendations and interviews, okay? So if you want a good recommendation letters, then you have to have relationship, okay? So the better connected you are with teachers, the more they can write about you as a student and person. A lot of students will, when asked for recommendation letters, what they'll do is they'll just go to teachers that they got A's in, hundreds in, okay? Not knowing that maybe the teachers does not know really much about you because you were doing really well, does not mean you had interaction with the teacher, okay? You didn't need to go to any office hours, so you didn't. You didn't need to ask questions because you understood it already, so you didn't. So you got good grades, but from teachers' perspective, they don't know anything about you, okay, except that you got good grades, okay? And then they can, or colleges can already see that from your report card. So you want to build these relationships, okay? That's why, even though schools have gone online and you might not have interactions with the teachers, go to the office hours, still continue to email and maintain that contact. Always sign up for interviews. So these interviews are conducted from the university, okay, through their interview is on site or through the alumnuses that are living in the location where you are, okay? So these people, alumnus can advocate for you to be admitted. So if you just blow them out of the water with your interview and you impress them really a lot, then they can go to the bat for you, okay? So like, wow, I was so impressed with this student's maturity and they are really Harvard material. Okay, things like that can carry a long way when they're in the decision part of their admissions. Okay, and which means you have to practice your interviews, okay? If you get all fidgety talking to adults, guess what? You're going to be fidgety during interview, and you don't want to come off not confident, okay? So get into the practice of talking to adults. I don't know how many students that I see, they're very extroverted amongst their friends, but amongst adults, they're very introverted, and they don't know how to, present themselves, things like that. So please work on, talking professionally. Please work on being comfortable around in conversations with adults, okay? What adults do you have? Okay, you have your parents, but I'm sure you don't talk to other parents like you talk to your parents, okay? You adults that are accessible to you, more readily accessible, those are teachers. So get to know them, talk to them, get used to them, and your counselors and your pastors or whatever, okay? Just take opportunities to get yourself comfortable. Consider early admission versus regular admission. So this is what I talked about earlier. Okay, so choose early admissions. If your spring semester looks strong along with the rest of your transcript, you have taken challenging courses and so on and so forth, then you want to choose early admission, okay? If you're already achieved, so you have all the factors done, okay, before the early admission deadline, then you want to take advantage of the early admission route, okay? Also, maybe you're applying to school that don't have early admissions, but it's a rolling admission school. What rolling admission means, so let's say they have a deadline November 30th as their application deadline. That does not mean that if you submit your application in September, they're going to wait until November to look at it. So rolling admission means whenever they get a completed application, even way before their deadline, they're going to look at it and they're going to make a decision on it, which means you have a lot more slots open, a lot more seats open in the beginning of the admission process than towards the end of the admission process. So if you wait until that deadline to submit your application, you're going to have a lot less seats that you're going to compete for, which means there's going to be a lot more competition for you, okay? So apply to these schools, even if you're not doing early admissions, do apply early if it's a rolling admission school. So if you're choosing, if you need more time to show improvement with the testing being later and later and things like that, then you want to choose regular admission. You don't want to be, just to apply early, you don't want to be showing yourself less than what you're capable of, okay? So just for the sake of applying early, I don't want you to submit an application with lackluster essay or not having taken the SAT or not having certain factors in there, okay? So this is a decision that you need to, so you want to, even if you're applying early or regular, you want that application to be completed and it's representing you 100 in the best light, okay? Don't apply early if your application is not completed enough that it's going to, because the benefits of you applying early is going to be lessened by your incomplete application, okay? So if you have a lot of questions about this or if you need help with this, we have a lot of ways of helping you. So we have obviously test prep, academic help, and we also have college admission services that we do. So if you're a junior right now, college admission services, we can advise you on many things, guide you through the whole process. So if you have questions and things like that, and you are really lost to this admission process, especially this year because of all the changes, then it might be worth your while to utilize the services, okay? Now, we do offer free college admission consultations. So if you, let's say, don't get your questions answered because of limited time today, or you have questions after the webinar or something like that, and I don't get to it, or like later on, like tonight or something, and then you have a question, you can always contact us. We love talking to students. We love talking to parents and advising them and giving them the right information that is beneficial to the student. So please take advantage of the consultations, okay? So we have 3 locations. Our offices are open to answer phone calls and, you know, taking registrations and things like that. So please take advantage. We have 3 locations, 1 in Dallas, 2 in Austin. And then we future seminar. So the next Saturday, we actually have a Secrets to Ivy League Admission webinar. So at 3 to 4, it will be conducted in English, and 5 to 6, it will be in Korean. So seats are limited, so please RSVP on our events page. Okay, this is all the students that have utilized our college admission services as seniors. So this is their most recent college admissions stats. Okay, so I'll be now taking questions. Let me open up the questions, and then I'll answer your questions. So a person asked me, what are SAT subject tests? Okay, so SAT subject tests are tests. So when I mention like subject tests or things like that, a lot of people are confusing that with AP subject tests. So SAT subject tests are given by the College Board, the same companies as that offer SAT, but this is a test to test your knowledge on certain subjects. So they have SAT subject test on chemistry, bio, physics, English, lit, history, so on and so forth. Okay, so it is what it is it's different from AP, because AP 5 score of a 5 is a perfect score, but you can get a 5 with a 70. It's a range. Okay, so from college's perspective, a 5 does not mean what it means to a lot of other people. So 5 could mean 100, or 5 could mean 70. So they like to see subject tests when they're trying to gauge how much that student knows. Okay, so so the subject tests, they are so the question was, how is it available? Is it requested? So a lot of schools, subject tests are given on the similar dates as the SAT deadlines, SAT dates. So if you want to take those, you can take up to 3 tests on a single sitting. Okay, so you apply through College Board and you register through College Board. So hello, James. Regarding your own 10-week program, were you offering an online options as well? So we are going to have 2 options. If it is safe to open the offices, we'll have in-person classes. But even if we have in-person classes, we'll still offer online options. Or it will not be safe to open, then we'll just have online classes. How important are freshman year grades? If you had really poor grades in freshman year but improved over the years, is that good? So in terms of like yearly assessments of freshman year, sophomore, and junior years, colleges pay more attention to the sophomore and junior years, but they do look at your freshman years. Okay, the impact of that is less, but not like, oh, it's not, they ignore it. They do look at it. Okay, especially the top schools. Okay, so but they're a little bit more lenient than your sophomore, junior. So if you've been on an so what you want to be doing is whatever you got freshman year, you want to be getting better sophomore year and better junior year. So they want to catch you on an uphill swing rather than a downhill. Okay, so if you struggle a little bit freshman year, but you are doing better sophomore and junior year, that's better. Okay, and that is good, and that's what they want to see. And then you might want to write an essay about why you struggled in your freshman year. That could also help as well. Okay. What happens when I'm waitlisted? Does a person reapply? Is that why they have to show continued interest? So when you're waitlisted, what that means is you're not rejected. Good news, you're not rejected yet. Okay, so what that means is if a spot opens up or things like that, then we're going to look at the people on the wait list. So you might be too good to reject right away, but you're not as good enough to accept right away. So that's what they're doing. So as I mentioned, waitlist is going to be utilized a lot more this year because of all the uncertainties, okay? So, but traditionally, if you're on the wait list, the path to getting into that school was really bad. But this year, students on the wait list, a lot of students, lot not mean 100%, okay? More than before, they were actually able to matriculate or get accepted into the schools from the wait list, okay? So a lot more than previous years. So that is why you want to show continued interest. So they put you on the wait list and you stop communication with them, then they're going to think, oh yeah, I guess they never had, you know, I guess we were never their number one choice. So if you're waitlisted right away, you want to send them a letter of continued interest. You're still my number one choice, all of that. Again, love letters, okay? In the circumstance that there are no available SAT test dates before applications are due, should I still submit my earlier SAT score even if it's around 25th percentile of the school's average SAT scores? Okay, if it's not going to be close to your actual, or, you know, so let's say you got a 1200 in your freshman year, okay? You just wanted to take it, and then you know right now if you take it you will get 1550. Then yeah, I would not submit the SAT score because that's not accurately representing who you are. Okay, so let's say you got, you know, but let's say you got 1450, and then right now you will get about 1450 to 1500. Okay, then I will still submit that. Okay. So if it's closer to the average SAT score or things like that, then I would definitely still submit that, okay? But the best option would be try to take the SAT or ACT again to make sure that you are representing your accurate self through this test. Will this video be available online? Yes. So we are editing and things like that. So, but it will be online. So you can check those to see which ones are up or when this will go up after this on our website. Okay. U.S. History subject test 670. Is it too low to submit for rising seniors? Well, I guess it would depend on what major the person is going to do. Okay, if it's going to be a humanities major that that person is applying to, then yes, U.S. History subject test of 670 might be too low. Okay, but if you're a STEM major, okay, you're going for STEM and then you got 670, it might be okay to do so. So normal guidelines that I usually give, if it's a major related subject, then you want to get about 750 or higher. Non-major related subject, then you want to get about 700 or higher. Hi, James. If I moved schools every year of high school and GPA ranking systems were different for each school, so I never had the chance to consistently have a high GPA ranking in comparison to others, will colleges still heavily rely on my GPA ranking during the apps? Okay, so even though you might have moved around schools, so your ranking will be most adversely affected. Okay, so you might not have a high ranking because you moved around a lot. Now, in terms of GPA, when you're applying, you have a different GPA system that they calculate you on. So one school might be from a 6.0 scale, one school might be from a 100-point scale. From school to school, they're all different. They have their own GPA system. But when you're applying to universities, you're graded on a universal GPA system. So you recalculate your GPA. So let's say this high school did not count this class as an AP, but you still might be able to count that as AP when you're recalculating. So your GPA might be high, okay, but your ranking might not reflect that, okay? So if you're going to a school that actually don't have ranking or things like that, actually it's fine. because you have a high GPA. But if you do have a school that has a ranking, then you might want to write an essay about you moving school so much and how it impacted you. Okay. When you have things such as family problems, divorce, etc., that really have affected you in high school, where would we write about these? So a lot of the schools have these optional essays, or like a third or fourth essay they call hardship essays. So that's an essay where you can just explain anything about yourself. So you can explain your bad grades in your freshman year, or you can talk about the hardship that you went through, like, you know, could be divorce, family matters, it could be financial things, anything that can kind of show to the schools disabilities or anything like that. You have a chance to show that. Okay, so you will write those in a hardship essay, or more informational essay. A lot of the schools, usually it's an optional essay, but as I mentioned, you want to write all the essays. Okay? How important is AP test score in college admissions? AP test score in college admission is not as important as your subject test. Okay, so if you have subject tests, SAT subject tests, then AP test scores will take backseat to that. If you don't have SAT subject tests, then they will look at your AP test scores a little bit more. Okay. I am a sophomore, and since this summer is unavailable for extracurricular, can I push my extracurricular to junior year? Is it all right even though it's the summer we apply to college? Yeah, you use junior year summer is the time you want to spend to add anything in, everything that you can do to add to your application. Again, it's not submitted until it's submitted, okay? So until then, you want to be doing anything and everything possible. Yes, so yeah, this summer plans are out the door, but so instead of just waiting though, okay, try to figure out something to do during this time. Okay, as I mentioned all of those things before, try to do all of that to showcase to the colleges what you've been doing productively during this time. Okay. I am a rising senior and I am very interested in the Gateway program at B2A. Can you explain it in detail, what the Gateway program entails and how, okay, so how it can put me at an advantage in relation to my peers. Okay, so our Gateway program is basically, you can think of it as all-in-one package for college admissions. Okay, so you have a dedicated counselor attached to you, you have several essay specialists attached to you, and we take you through the whole process, okay? And from choosing schools to choosing majors, strategizing to get admitted to those schools, applications, resumes, and the biggest help that we give is the essays, which is the most important part of your application, and interview prep and financial aid. So anything and everything that has to do with your college admissions. And because we have so much experience, as you can see from all of our acceptances, okay, we have all range of acceptances from the Ivy Leagues all the way to, so just because you might not think, oh, I'm not going for Ivy Leagues, I don't need help. Well, even getting us accepted into public universities this year, you're going to have a lot more competition. So if you have the means and if you need that help, I highly recommend that you get help from these services, okay? Can you please? Okay, so UT Austin Honors or UT Dallas McDermott Scholar. So I'm assuming that this person is a senior and got accepted to UT Honors and UT Dallas with McDermott Scholar. Okay, so if you can let me know, I guess this is better answer once I know you better, because it would also affect how much, like, it would depend on your financial situation. Okay, it would also depend on what major you chose to do, and those kind of things. So I could better advise you if you contact us privately, or maybe set up a one-on-one consultation or something like that. then you'll be, so once I understand your situation better, then I can give you a better advice, okay? So McDermott Scholar is a full ride, so which means UTD, you don't have to pay anything. But he also, I guess the student also got into UT Honors, UT Austin Honors to program. So there's a pros and cons to depending on what major that person is in, okay? Okay, so SAT, Math 800, English 730. It is mostly at the 25th percentile. Should we spend lots of time studying English and retake? No, if you're, especially if you're thinking of applying as a STEM major, English 730 is fine. But if you're thinking of applying to a humanities major, then yes, I might take that and try to make that as 800. But it would depend on what all the other things that you currently have. So if you have SAT still not done, then that will take priority over retaking the subject test for English 7 English, okay? So it would depend on where your situation is at and what major you're applying to, what level of school you're applying to. If we got accepted into a program, but it got canceled because of COVID, should we write that we got accepted into the program on our resume? You could, but in terms of the impact, it's not going to be much. So if there was portion on the resume, you probably put that on the back of the resume or the later portion of the resume. But in terms of just having to put that, it should be okay. Now, if it's an award type program, then yes, I will put that. But if it's a program, so who knows, you might be able to do the program next year if you're a sophomore. If not, if you're junior, then I might put that in there, okay? But it's going to be more about, okay, how did you deal with that cancellation? Okay, did you say, okay, I guess that's it for my extracurricular, or you say, okay, then I am going to pursue this or that, and then be productive as possible, okay? If you accomplish, do something that would be valuable to your college apps in your senior year, or at least after you submit the app, is there any ways you can update the app? Okay, until you submit the application, you can add those, okay? Even after you submit the application before the decision, you can still add that as well, okay? And if you're waitlisted and then even after you submitted your application and you got waitlisted or something like that, along with your continued interest, you want to also add on whatever stuff that you've accomplished during those times. All right. So because of the time constraints, I'm going to have to end the webinar here. Okay, if I didn't get to your questions, I'm sorry, but feel free to call us, email us with those questions, or set up a free consultation, and then I can talk to you more accurately since I'll be able to ask questions as well. Okay, so please look forward to, we're trying to do a webinar a week to keep everyone informed. So please take advantage of that. Thank you for attending, and thank you, and stay safe. Okay, bye.